Yeah, being active is very important. And speaking of which, Derrick Lewis came back after a
Yeah,
long, long time off, and he took on your countryman
my
Blagoy Ivanov.
countryman, Blagoy.
What was your takeaway from this fight? It was very slow, it was methodical, but
Right.
as you can see in the heavyweight division, that's normal. Before we get to what Derrick Lewis said in the post
In the
fight
post, yeah.
interview, let's get right into the fight
Yeah.
itself. What were some of your takeaways?
So the I guess I'll just kind of preface what their kind of attitudes coming into the fight were. Blagoy's always kind of timid. Always kind of timid coming into those fights, especially now in the UFC. He's very careful. He doesn't necessarily initiate. He's more of a counter, kind of like come to me. I'm gonna wait it out and then make my move. Now we saw this mofo can take a punch, like definitely can take a lot of punches. If you can take those from Derrick
Derrick
Lewis,
Lewis for sure.
oh my God! Like I think everybody was just amazed at like how is he still like in the fight. But anyways, there was a couple moments where he had the Americana on Derrick Lewis, where I was shocked how Derrick Lewis even is that flexible. I think the fact that saved
Seriously.
him was that he was able to move his elbow closer to his head, and that kind of
Right.
prevented the full extension.
Okay.
Because if he had like separated, there was a mistake where I think Blagoy could have
Was
moved his
tucking that
weight,
elbow a little bit too close, and
could have moved his weight, like how he was facing
yes, he was.
Derek. If he moved to face away from him, he would have been
A
able
lot
to
more
put
leverage.
more leverage on
Right.
it. That's usually what like I don't know. I find in training that works for me. Obviously, I'm not on that level, but and I'm not trying to Americano Derek Lewis.
Right.
So
That was some crazy explosiveness he demonstrated to just explode
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
raw athleticism. That wasn't technique. That was power. To see Derek Lewis roll out of two of those Americanas is absolutely
He
amazing.
was chilling. He was chilling.
Now, obviously, Derek Lewis won on split decision.
Right.
One of the cards had 30-27 in favor of Lewis. Another one, 29-28 in favor of Blagoy. And the last one, 29-28 in favor of Derek Lewis. Obviously, split decision going his way. What was your take on
I don't know.
some of the scoring just throughout the whole night?
Yeah, I like in particular for this fight. I don't know if I'm prejudiced or not because Derek Lewis did dish out a lot of punishment to Blagoy.
Especially in the third round.
Even though if you look at the total strikes, I don't know. Whatever. I don't know. I think that it was a very even fight. I think the split decision was fair in terms of being a split decision. I think that he might have gone towards Blagoy. Maybe I'm prejudiced again, so don't fucking take my word for it. But I don't know, man. I feel like the judging was very off because of the fact that it was in New York. And the other two scores were 29-28. The first judge though gave 30-27. So what fight were you watching
that's-
really? Like that's my thing. Like
And that brings up another thing like that Joe Rogan brought up at the very end of the night. He's saying maybe we should have more accountability from the judges. Have their faces and their names put up on the big board with their scoring.
Correct.
That level of transparency and accountability will result in guys actually being a little bit more vigilant in how they score a fight.
correct. And put up the scores as the fight is going on. First round ends, put them up on the board and show everybody. So even the fighters can see, oh, I lost the first round. I need to step my game up. I don't see how that can be a bad thing.
I mean that's the thing at the end of the day. It's like why have them going in with the subjective perspective of they feel like they're winning or their corner feels like
Right.
they're winning. Just put it up. Let's see what's going on here.
Like think about it, basketball, all the other sports, soccer, whatever. Oh, we're not gonna tell you what the score is until the end of the fucking game. Like, bro, we all know. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's a part of the fucking whole thing.
It's a silly example, but it also
Yeah.
is a very smart example. Like I
Right,
mean, like dude, it's very very true. Like I remember back in like the 80s and the 70s, not that I was there watching, but I do recall this. The TV broadcast for sports, they didn't have those flies with the score on the bottom. That was a new innovation, but we're talking about the 80s and the 70s before it was popular.
Yeah.
It's 2019. And
Yeah.
some of these judges are doing some egregious stuff when it comes to giving their scores. And I feel like for us to have hard evidenced analytics based on which judge leans which way, it would be great to have some statistics to back it up by having that transparency and having it.
I'm all for it.
Now, obviously, after the fight, Derek Lewis was talking.
Yeah, I know.
Was talking because Blagoy Ivanov. If you guys haven't heard from one of our previous podcasts, Jad already told the story of what happened there. Blagoy was stabbed and it actually with a knife, and it actually hit him through a sternum, and it hit his heart, pierced his heart. He was in critical condition for I think 18 to 20 months, and that's just insane to survive. Derrick Lewis after the fight said, "I was trying to punch through that booty hole on his chest, but my hands was wet."
It's so funny.
Oh, my hands was wet, and I like it deep in that ass
and raw or whatever.
I'm like raw. I was like, dude, what are you on about?
Even Joe Rogan was like, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's so funny.
I mean, it's a pay-per-view, but still, bro.
Made some comments about Donald Trump and whatnot.
Yes.
And side note, Donald Trump being in attendance, they didn't show it in the stadium, him on the camera. Now, there's a couple fighters like Curtis Blades and a couple others that were sitting close-ish to him. And while he was walking in, and you could hear vociferous booing from the crowd. So that indicates to you what was going on. Now, Dana White afterwards said that when he entered the ring, the arena with Donald Trump, that he was getting cheered, and I think we all knew that wasn't the case.
Yeah, most likely.
But to be fair, I know why Dana White's leaning that direction. I mean, Trump, the Taj Mahal was one of the first places where the UFC was allowed to go and to go and have a sanctioned bout in, and Donald Trump was one of the few people to come and let that happen. Then after they went from there, they went to the Meadowlands, and that had nothing to do with Donald Trump, but he still showed up. So he's always been a supporter of Dana White's and the UFC. And I think Dana White is just understanding and appreciative of a guy who he looks at as a friend.
I agree with that, and I think he's one of those people that, you helped me out when I needed the help. So yeah, I mean, I'm totally for it. I'm not for Trump, but I'm okay with that relationship. I don't mind it.
And then the last fight of the night here, not the last one, but the most exciting. Let's put it that way. The most exciting fight of the night, Kevin Lee versus Gregor Gillespie.
Yes.
Now, Gregor Gillespie came into this 13-0, undefeated. Everyone was talking about his amazing wrestling. He would have been an Olympian had it not been for Jordan Burroughs being obviously part of the Olympic
Which we
team.
all know Jordan Burroughs is a
absolute beast. If this is your second option, then that tells you everything you need to know from a wrestling perspective. 13-0, like I said, and people are saying because of that wrestling and that ability to scramble, maybe he'd be a great matchup for Khabib, be the kryptonite in a way. People were saying that. Now, obviously, he had to prove himself. So what did he do? He stepped up in competition against Kevin Lee. And Kevin Lee made some changes in his camp. He's made some changes in his mentality. I'm super excited for this guy. He's going to realize his potential. I think he did in this fight. And he's going to continue to grow. He changed the TriStar gym. He's now training with GSP, training with... why is the name slipping my mind?
Firas Zahabi.
Firas Zahabi is an absolute beast when it comes to implementing game plans. What were some of your takeaways from the way that Kevin Lee looked that night?
Yeah, we already chatted before this podcast about the move Kevin Lee was making to Montreal and to Firas Zahabi and to TriStar. And I think we all knew even back then that was the right move. Joe Rogan kind of put that thought into Kevin Lee's mind, I think, at his podcast.
Changes, yeah.
And he took him up on it and ended up connecting with Firas and all that stuff. And I love it. I think that's the right spot for him. I like the move to Montreal, a little more isolated from being in Vegas. Different lifestyle. You have teammates such as GSP, and you have a strategic mastermind that's been around the block and back, like Firas Zahabi, and I love it. I think the stance was low so he can prevent the takedowns. That's strategy number one. You can see right there on display. The second thing was the kick that he ended up finishing him with. He wasn't trying it out over and over and over again. He timed it perfectly. So I love it. I think we're going to see good things for Kevin Lee. He was humble after the fight. I love it all.
Yeah, I loved the post-fight interview with him. That was my favorite part of the whole night for him. Coming off of an amazing right hook followed by a left high kick knockout. Go watch that fight if you haven't seen it. It was set up perfectly right at the halfway point of the first round. He set him up with a beautiful body shot to the ribs and then went high with the hook and then followed it up with a left kick, vicious, on the button that Gregor dipped into. So that really added a lot of inertia. And hey, he fell back and his hands were starched to his side, and he hit he fell to a seated position against the cage. He's very lucky in that respect. That's where people end up hitting their heads on the ground and getting severe concussions. So I'm glad to see that he didn't suffer additional damage from just the fall itself, despite Kevin Lee getting a hammer fist in there. Could have been a lot worse. But yeah, Kevin Lee was saying, I don't want to hear about no title fights right now. I just want to get back in here and do what I have to do. So I loved seeing that from him, and that was a really fun time to see him like
Yeah.
come to fruition like that.